Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to FishingBooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
When the hunt matters, trust the gear that's built to perform. At Scree Gear, we design premium hunting apparel that keeps you comfortable, concealed, and ready for whatever the mountain throws your way. From early season spot and stalk hunts to late season extremes, Scree Gear is trusted by hunters who refuse to compromise. And if you want to sharpen your skills and follow real hunting adventures, watch Scree TV on Waypoint TV. Visit ScreeGear.com to gear up today. Then catch Scree TV on Waypoint TV and experience the hunt like never before.
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast. Kevin and Chuck. Today, we're going to talk about the soil. Because you're always like, well, we don't spend enough time talking about the dirt. So there's that whole grounding movement and hippies and the whole thing. Well, I don't know if we're going to exactly get into that, but I do want to talk about what makes good soil. And, we all live in different parts of the country and even in the same part of the country from house to house or, garden plot to garden plot, your soil can change. And things are different and how you grow. And, sometimes you're like, well, I just can't make my garden work for me. Sometimes it gets like that. And the answer is the soil really makes a difference. Sometimes people live in like microclimates and you might have a little different temperature and your, plants might flower a little later than your neighbors or whatever. It might not be that you're doing something wrong. It can be a little bit with the temperature, but one of the key fundamentals to a good garden is understanding your soil. And right. I got to say, growing your own food, that has a little bit to do with survival and prepping. When it comes to long-term survival, it actually being able to reproduce and make more food is a big thing. Also, it's very hard to keep nutrition up with long-term food storage. We can plan and store vitamins and things like that. But obviously growing and producing fresh food is going to, be able to up your vitamins and nutritional input. So I figure we just kind of jump into it. So one of the things, good organic soil will be like rich in humus, which is organic material. Humus is like the end result of decaying material like leaves, grass clippings, compost. It also should hold the soil. It should hold moisture very well. Right. When you pick up dirt, it should be loose and fluffy and filled with air. That's like the ideal. And they call that loam. Loam is the dream garden soil. And we all kind of just want to get to that point where, it's the perfect pH, has the right nutrients in it. It's airy and, and just kind of does what it should. So there's a couple ways you can go about it. One of the best ways, and obviously we're going to talk about compost and things like that. That has a big, part of our, utilizing our soil. Because remember, I pointed out that there's, rich in humus, right? So a lot of compost in there, a lot of, stuff that's decaying and full of, nitrogen and things like that. That's going to, help out. That used to be the big thing, would be to put nitrogen in the soil. And, the farmers, that's, one of the things they did to get plants to grow quickly, even though they may, maybe lose a little nutritional value. Because they get it to grow quickly, but you don't have all the other supporting things there, that actually benefit it. So anyway, one of the first things you can do to, work out your soil is you can get it tested. Now, if you're like me, you don't do that kind of thing. But luckily, my wife is smarter than me on that kind of thing, and she went and got it tested anyway. So that sounds complicated and like something I shouldn't do. So, everybody knows like you have like a cooperative extension somewhere near where you live for your county. And like it'll be for, the state will have one, and then it's broke up in like regional offices all around. Your cooperative extension will do the testing for you. So some places actually do it for free. Typically, they charge anywhere from like $8 to $16. I've never heard of anybody charging more than like $20 to get your soil tested. The way that you want to get a sample to take your get it tested, you're going to want to. Now I have like too many notes. I actually did too much research.
Well, I know a lot of people. That have lawns and that the place has been a lawn for a long time and you've constantly been cutting it. The grass kind of composts with the, on the top little bit of soil. So you're going to have, generally speaking, your lawn is going to be great soil for like the first 6 inches. And then you're going to start getting into the real soil that's underneath. I know I've got great soil for about 3 or 4 inches, and then it's all rock and clay underneath that. Because the lawn's been there and it's just been, cut and composted and cut and composted, but it doesn't really create a great soil.
Soil is right. So to get a good mix of it, what you want to do is you want to go to about 10 different places in the garden. So all in where you're going to be working. If your garden is going to be 100 feet long, you're going to want to pick like 10 random spots. And you're just going to dig down about 6 inches and take a scoop of the dirt and, like a 6-inch scoop. And you're going to throw it all in a bucket and from about 10 different locations. And you're going to mix it all up kind of with your hands and break it up and kind of stir it up. That's what you want to do. So it's a general mix of what you have in the area. All right. Now, and I'm not saying like all around your property. I'm saying all around your garden, where you're doing your stuff. And, like I said, even if that's 100 feet long, that's where you should be taking your sample. I know we had 2 that are maybe separated by, I don't know, probably about 100 yards and our 2 gardens. And we actually did a soil test on both. We went, and we actually got different results from the both. So, and your soil test has a lot of neat things. One, it's going to have the pH, but it's also going to have like better descriptions of what minerals and nutrients you're going to have in there. And your local farm people will be able to tell you, like ours came back, like they asked what you're going to do. Like we specified, this is going to be a flower garden. This is going to be a vegetable garden. So on the report that we got back, it has like an optimum pH range. Which ours, it says it should be between 5.8 and 6.5. Ours came back at 5.5. So in our case, it says like lime recommendations, to raise the pH, it says 60 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So you can do the little bit of math, but I mean, so for $10, having stuff like that is kind of neat, to be able to say, hey, you're telling me exactly what I need to do. It had like a phosphorus index and, we were a little low on the phosphorus. They again wanted optimum to be 50 to 70 and it ended up coming back like 39. Potassium was 50, so, but they talk about what you can do to raise it and different things like that. So, and they actually recommend, what nutrients you might want to add and what might grow well in that area. So it's pretty cool to be able to have it kind of laid out in front of you and know what you're supposed to do. Now, for those of you who don't, go along with that getting tested because you're like, I'm just too lazy to make that phone call and figure out where that is and drop off some dirt and get some answers.
I'm 100% on that. That team.
Yeah. I'm going to do it on my own. Okay. So
I'll just fuck up and fuck up and fuck up until I get it right.
Right. That's definitely seems to be the norm, and the stubborn man way, right? And that's how I am. Like I would have never in 100 years gotten to the point where I was testing my soil, but I guess my wife takes it a little more seriously and actually wants to produce real results. And
she wants to make it actually work. Yeah. Yeah. Now one way.
Yeah, turns out you want it to work. Go ahead.
Yeah, one way you can raise your pH is wood ash. Because that actually has a lot of lime in it. But
yes,
I fucked up. I did that once and dug up, my fire pit there and mixed it in with my soil. It was way too much. Way too much.
Yeah?
A little bit goes a long way. Yep. So when you're mixing it, it's good to mix it in with some compost to do that. But I would recommend testing your pH before you go doing anything like that, and get the stuff from the garden store. Don't try and do it yourself, because you don't know what the fuck you're doing.
And when you buy bags of different chemical stuff at the garden store, they all have different numbers. Mm-hmm. They tell you about the way it's going to affect the outcome, and it doesn't take that much research. It's funny. My wife and I, when we first, she's really into gardening, and it ends up being a good, kind of perfect match where, hunter and I'm all, survival protection hunter, and she's got the whole growing and thing going, the whole other end of it. And she doesn't mind spending the hours out in the sun all day and cooking. I don't know. That's a little much for me. It ends up dragging me out a little more than I'd like, but it turns out when I used to live in New York, we lived around a bunch of hippies. I don't know, patchouli, the whole thing, right? So one of the local colleges there had in some small farm kind of guy who wrote a book and coming to speak. Actually, I guess it was the wife that wrote the book, and we were going to go check him out and whatever. And we're at this lecture, and I mean, these people are all like from Woodstock and shit. So these are like real hippies. And we're out there, and the guy's like, yeah, I do this to garden, and this is what I did to, raise the pH and different things. And they're talking about the dirt and all aspects of farming. So it's pretty broad in a 3-hour lecture, different things that you can do. And this lady just like keeps raising her hand, and the guy's trying to ignore her, you could tell. And finally, he's like, what can I help you with? And she's like, well, what about the soil? And he's like, well, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, what are you doing to preserve the soil? And he's like, look, lady, I'm doing everything I can just to keep my farm going. I can't care about the soil too. But I got to tell you, if you really put your focus on the dirt, it's going to make a big result in the end. And I think he knows that later. We've seen subsequent books that whatever, and it really does, make a change. So we're going to get into compost in a minute, but there's basically 3 different types of soil. All right. So you're either going to have clay, sandy soil, or loam. And as I mentioned previously, loam is kind of the dream, soil of what you
that's
like.
The ideal soil.
So what you're going to do is there's 3 like basic tests that you can do on your own that you can do just because you listen to this podcast instead of contacting your local, hippie compound. So the first thing is the squeeze test. So you could do the same thing where you kind of take that sample of dirt and you want to pick up a handful of soil that's kind of moist, but not like wet. So you don't want to go out like right after it rained, but you also don't want to be, at 5 o'clock after the sun's been all day and it's just cooked because it hasn't rained in a week, because that's going to give you different results when you do this test. But basically you want to take a handful of the dirt, and if it holds up, like when you squeeze it in your hand, if it holds its place, and then when you touch it, it'll crumble, that's loam. That's the perfect dirt. All right. So you want to squeeze it. It makes that firm shape like a fist when you open your hand. And then if you kind of poke at it, it should just kind of crumble apart.
Right.
They say like cookie crumbs, just kind of break into pieces. Now, if you squeeze it and it holds its shape, but then when you poke at it, it just kind of stays in its shape. Like when you push your finger in it, it just kind of indents. That's clay. That's a no-go. Now, clay actually has a lot of nutrients and is very good for that. So you're starting out with like a healthy soil, I would say, but you're going to end up having to do things to get air and work on drainage, and you're going to have to work for it with clay.
Right.
But
clay
it doesn't mean it can't be done.
Good. Yeah, clay is also good because it holds moisture. It holds the water there. And, if you're in a drier climate, clay is a good base to start with. You know, if that's your
when
soil
it's really hot, clay is
not
the end of the world. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's easy to change, but it's a lot easier to change when you can go to the store or you can do things as opposed to trying to change it when you're trying to figure out survival. So think about it like that. The last type is when you squeeze your hand and you open your hand and it just falls apart. That's going to be sand. All right. So next is a percolation test. For this, you're going to want to dig a hole 6 inches wide and a foot deep. Fill the hole with water and let it drain out completely. Fill it again and let it drain out. Now, if there's still water in there after 4 hours, you have bad drainage and you're going to have a problem. And if you have very clay soil, you're going to typically have that kind of problem where you have that slower drain. So that's something you want to, address. Now, obviously, you're going to want to get air into the soil. So we're going to talk about different ways to do that in a minute. And that's something, you're going to need to do. The last test you can do. And again, these kind of don't really tell you the pH, but this last one might get you in the right neighborhood. So the next is the worm test. So you need to go out when the soil is 55 degrees or warmer. So you're not going to go out in the wintertime, that kind of thing, right? And obviously, you know that the ground is cooler than, the air. So just keep that in mind. You want the soil to be moist again, but not soaked. So typically, if you go out in the morning, you're going to get this kind of thing. So dig a square foot hole and pull that dirt out and throw it in a bucket or on some cardboard or something like that. And then break it up with your hand, all the dirt. Now, believe it or not, you should find at least 10 worms inside that square foot of dirt, or you're lacking organic matter, or your soil's too acidic. It's one or the other, and I can't really help you on which one. Of the organic matter or acidic, you got to kind of figure out the pH. Now, I do have one more test for you, and this one, I know it would be good if I had like a clever joke about something you could do, but I don't have anything like that for you today. So then the last one is going to be reading the field. Believe it or not, you can look at a field and tell the soil by what's growing in it.
That's true.
And you can look at the type of plants. A few individual weeds don't mean much for the consistent population, but if you find a bunch of the same type of plants, it'll tell you what's going on. So the growth characteristics of weed can tell you much about, the soil. So you have a lot of different things. Cornflowers will be blue on soils with high pH and pink on acidic soils. So it's kind of like a pH litmus test, right? If you have a lot of daisies, believe it or not, that actually means that you kind of have poor drainage. There's a lot of neat things. So you can actually look online and look up, reading the field and see if you can figure out, some of the different stuff on there. It's pretty cool. I'll see if I can drop some other good bits on you here. Because again, this is my, Perennial sow, thistle, and docks both indicate wet areas, but docks prefer more acidic soil, while thistle is like a higher pH. Vigorously growing leguminous, I don't even know how to speak, leguminous weeds, such as clovers, are a sign that soil nitrogen is low. I actually have some areas with a lot of like clovers growing on. Stunted yellowish weeds of other types may indicate the same thing, that low, nitrogen. So these are all things you can kind of look at, and there's other ways to do it, to figure it out by looking at different plants. So that's something to consider. So now that you kind of have been able to determine your soil, now let's talk a little bit about what we can do about it. So remember I said kind of the key to good soil is a lot of organic material. Now, Organic material is compost, right? So basically compost is a pretty cool thing here. So what you're doing is compost is decaying, believe it or not, it's decaying plant and animal matter.
Right.
So I don't know, the animal matter kind of sounds new to me, like you don't think of like dead animals as part of your, your
Well,
compost.
let me just give you a bit of advice on that. When you're doing your compost bin, don't ever throw meat in there. Animal. It's just going to stink like dead shit, You
don't want that.
Yeah, feed your meat scraps to the dog. Throw it in the garbage. Don't compost it. It's not worth it. There's going to be dead shit in there from bugs and different stuff. That'll be enough.
Exactly.
And that's fine. Don't, when your cat brings home a fucking squirrel, don't throw its body in your compost bin, because it's just going to be disgusting.
It is going to be disgusting. I'd have to give you that. So people also worry about how to get it to break down quickly. Now, there's a lot of different things on that. The first, I've definitely read, different people have different ideas of what makes good compost. I've definitely read books about people who are like, shredded leaves are the key to great compost, and you don't really want anything else. Now, I've never heard anybody. You have or have not?
I've heard that bullshit too.
Yeah. Okay.
And yes, that's a good way to do it. Yeah. If you want to have a compost bin and don't want to do a whole lot of work and have it actually work out perfectly without any effort, then cut up leaves and grass will be fine.
Now, the big thing you just heard Kevin note, though, is cut up, right? So that's actually a big thing. So if you just put solid leaves that you rake up out of your yard, it's going to take time.
And it's going to be a wet, slimy mess, and it's going to take a lot longer to
Now, if you're really turning it over and working it and doing it, you may be able to get there with your stacked up leaves within a year or whatever. That's going to happen. But if you can cut those up with the lawnmower, or they have those chipper shredders, if you can get it, that kind of stuff, anything you can do to break it up. You also, if you're mixing in, like I got lucky where the property I bought, they hadn't raked certain areas of the yard in like 15 years. Turns out I had some great composting leaves out there,
Right. You just got to dig underneath a little bit and you're good.
You pull them up and they're all like a 1/4 inch squares, like, oh, this is gold right here, and you get all excited. You wouldn't think you'd get so excited about compost, but but having that mixed in, having the new and the old will help the new stuff break down faster too, is a nice thing. So you're going to want to put it in a pile. Now, you want it in kind of a warm area, but believe it or not, if it's actually too hot and too much direct sunlight, it'll end up slowing it down because the bugs won't be able to hang out there. It can actually get too hot where it cooks them and makes it uncomfortable for them. So compost, Kevin, tell us some of the things you can put in compost. So we got grass, leaves. You do want a mix of both brown and green. Green is going to add the nitrogen and the stuff to, kind of get the bugs going and do some exciting stuff. It's actually the decomposing process that's going to heat it up and make things go quicker. So adding those other things will really help. I know we can put coffee grounds in there. What else you got?
Coffee grounds are great. Eggshells. You can put you could be surprised at the amount of stuff you can put in there. As gross as you want to be, you can put nail clippings in there. You can put dog hair, hair in there.
Believe it or not, hair is actually really good for a compost pile, as gross as that is.
Right. Yeah. All your trimmings, when you're trimming vegetables and stuff, I keep a little compost, container underneath my sink. When every time I cut up vegetables and stuff, I put all the stuff I'm discarding in there, banana peels and that sort of stuff. It's great for it. But you're not gonna, if you stick only to that, you're not gonna do well, because you're just not gonna produce enough. One thing I would say that fucks a lot of people up on compost is don't put your onions and your garlic in your compost bin, because they're acidic enough that they're going to slow down the process.
Okay. That's
they're going to kill the bacteria off. Same thing with citrus. Don't put lemons or limes or any of those peels in there, because it's, that's going to slow down the process and the bacteria from growing. And you want your compost to be alive. So you don't want to put so stay away from the citrus, the onions, and the garlic.
Even though Kevin's being a negative Nelly and telling you all the things that you can't put in your compost pile, I'm going to throw you a bone here and tell you, you know what the internet says, and I don't even know if this is true, but the internet says urine helps increase the nitrogen in a compost pile. So if you're like, I'm outside, I have to pee in the compost pile, and your wife's like, no, you shouldn't be peeing in the yard. You're like, well, yeah, I'm a team player here. No,
it's for the garden. Yeah,
it's for the garden. Now, so actually,
urine has a lot of ammonia, and ammonia turns into nitrogen, so it can be beneficial. I would not save up my piss for that specifically.
No, I would not do that at all. And also remember, at some point, nitrogen. Yeah, you can have too much nitrogen.
Yeah, and at some point you're going to want to put your hands in that compost to use it. So just keep that in mind also. Maybe just take it easy on the pissing in the compost.
Forget the whole urine thing. I was just trying to throw you a bone there, but I did read that on the internet. Actually, that's one of the ways to tell if you have too much nitrogen in your compost is if it smells like ammonia. You know that you want to, and you can actually change that kind of process by adding blood meal or something like that to slow down the nitrogen. So the next thing is turning your compost frequently is going to make it go a lot quicker as far as the decomposing. I actually read things about in as little as 18 days, people have been able to get compost to, kind of mature and be usable in the garden. But with turning it like 7 times in that 18 days, and there's a whole process. I'm sure if you look online and search some kind of 18-day compost, I'm not really going for that. It sounds too quick, and I want to make sure that the stuff is decomposed and really broke down before I, use it. Now, how do you know if your compost is good or ready? I don't know. I mean, I'll ask you, Kevin, in a minute here, but basically it should smell like earth. You know, that kind of dirt smell that you expect. Compost should be dark brown. Compost should be unidentifiable. And what that means is you shouldn't stick your hand in there and be like, hey, that's a banana peel. Then it's not good at that point. Oh, there's an apple core. Oh, that used to be a onion. That's not compost.
That's not compost. Right.
That's not compost. Once the compost is ready and you have mixed it up, you should be able to kind of, in a perfect world, I mean, you can just kind of take it out of the pile and whatever. But what I've seen people do is make a frame and they'll put something somewhere between chicken wire and hardware cloth with, the right size hole, and they'll sift it. And that dirt that comes through is going to be like gold. I mean, that really is going to be your dream compost right there. And then what they'll do is the stuff that doesn't sift through should go back into the compost pile that you're making for, the next batch. Right. So that'll, keep decomposing until it breaks down. So that's kind of what you're looking for. But
now I do 2 compost bins.
Okay.
Everything gets thrown into the first bin. Okay. And then, maybe once or twice a month, I'll go out there and with a pitchfork and scoop all the big shit out of it. And that goes into the second bin. Okay. So that first bin is always going to have good shit in it. And that second bin's always going to be decomposing.
Yeah. So, now, I have.
You
sorry,
go with just different.
I have a lot
different stuff. Yeah. Now, you want to make sure your compost is getting air. So you're not going to throw it in a garbage can or something like that. You're going to want to kind of pile it up so that the air can get to all the sides and keep the air, moving around it. But you also want to keep it damp. You don't want it all dried out.
Right. So damp, but not soaking wet. So that's actually one of the cool things. When you go out to turn your compost, you're going to notice, hey, does it just look like dry powder? Because if it does, I should throw some water on there, right? With the sprinkler and the hose and kind of mix some in. But if you go out and it's a wet, soppy mess, you got another problem there too. So you're going to want to find a way. Either you have it in too shady of a spot, where it's just too much.
Never drying it at all.
And never drying. But again, the same thing, like when I'd mentioned about that kind of happy medium with sun. I mean, you kind of have to read the soil, if you will, of, how it's doing by when you're turning it and kind of judge. Is it too wet? Is it just staying moist? Is it, what is the nice level that you're getting at? These are all things you're going to want to kind of start judging and read as you're playing with the compost. Now, I actually got a cool tractor now with a little bucket and I lift some things. So I can actually work my compost, except that turns out I'm not a master tractor driver yet. So I don't mix it up as well as I would like. But it's cool that I can take like this giant pile of leaves and move it, from one section and turn it all over into the next section. And, like Kevin said about having 2 different piles, you can have the one kind of aging and maturing, and then you have the other one that's sitting. Now, once we get the organic matter into the garden, believe it or not, they say if you have clay, you might want as much as like 6 inches on top of the clay and then mix it in to, kind of get that perfect balance. Now, we also talked about pH, or did you have more on compost, or is that kind of...
No, but I would let's hit on real quick just putting the compost in your soil like you were talking about. You want to mix it in good with your soil. What I like to do with my beds whenever I'm building a new bed is I'll like to dig down a bit and fill the bottom up. I say dig down a bit. I mean like a couple of feet.
Whoa,
and then fill underneath it with whatever. It doesn't have to be composted yet. You can just put, leaves in there. I like to do old logs, because it holds the moisture in there. And then fill on top of it with all your dirt, and mix that in with the compost. And then you're ready to go, because that, as those logs and those things decompose in the bottom, they're going to release nitrogen into the soil. So that means you can plant in that bed over and over again without having to redo the soil every year.
That is nice. Yeah.
Yeah. That's called hugelkultur is what that is when you bury shit underneath your beds, your garden beds that are going to decompose and hold the moisture in the soil underneath year after year.
Now that's really, something that pays off, and there's a lot more you can read about that and kind of, delve in. We're just kind of covering. I mean, I would say that we're covering a little more than basics, but they're kind of what should be basics to gardening and farming. But a lot of people don't really think about, the dirt and how much that matters. They'll throw a little compost or something like that in there, but there's really a lot to it and a lot to kind of take in.
Let me tell you just real quick, when you go to your local gardening store, Lowe's or wherever, you're going to see bags. They'll sell bags of compost and you can buy it. And that's fine if you don't feel like doing all the composting yourself. But don't be that stupid bitch that goes and looks at the fucking 2 bags of compost and one bag is $1.50 and the other bag is $3.50 because it says organic on it.
Ooh, I like organic.
Yeah, no, you're just fucking stupid if you're buying organic compost because all compost is organic. That's exactly, you cannot be not organic with compost.
Organic matter, huh? That's what
right.
You're going
that's
with.
That's just how it works. That all compost is organic. Don't pay an extra $1.50 per bag because it says organic on the container. They're all organic. So just a heads up.
About.
I just saw this basic bitch when I was at Lowe's the other day, and she was looking at the compost the bags of composted dirt, and going back and forth, and she saw the one said organic on it, and so she went back and got all those ones, even though they're $5 more per bag. You're just wasting money. They're all organic. Just because it says it on the label doesn't mean anything.
I don't know what you're talking about. All right. Anyway, moving right along. So there's a couple other things that affect your soil. We talked about the pH and the aeration. So we got the compost kind of covered. Let's talk about the pH. So pH, there's a couple things you can do. Well, one of the things that we're going to also touch on in aerating the soil is peat moss. Now, peat moss is going to actually raise the acidity a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I also mentioned you could add lime. And, I talked about, what it said in my chart here about, adding so much lime, and that's going to be sprinkled and mixed in with the compost, when you're setting up your garden. There's also vermiculite. Now, each thing has its own benefit. The reason you would use vermiculite as opposed to maybe peat moss is it's going to not raise the pH as much. However, you'll find that it's more expensive. Also,
it's not gonna mess with your pH, but it's gonna hold a lot of moisture. Vermiculite is similar to that. When you get a potted plant and it's got that little white shit in there. It's like almost looks like styrofoam. That's what vermiculite is. That's what it is, and you can mix it into your soil outdoors. It doesn't have to be your
and
potted
both
plants.
are considered organic, peat moss or vermiculite, so you don't have to worry about that for you. Those of you that were just offended by Kevin's previous comments. Mm-hmm. So that you're safe there. But the thing is, you can buy, I think I looked on Amazon, 4 cubic feet was like $39 for a big bag that you could order. Now, vermiculite will come with either calcium or magnesium in it. And you kind of need to decide, we have a lot of clay in our soil. So I know that my wife actually likes to add liquid calcium. So we would get vermiculite with maybe more magnesium as the, solution to, solving our problems. The calcium's actually supposed to help break up the clay, the liquid calcium. So that's something to consider there too. However, even in our situation, we end up adding a lot of peat moss, and we just, add an appropriate amount of lime in order to balance that out, to counter the acid. So, that kind of thing. It's all a juggling act and trying to get it right. But that's why, reaching out to your, local cooperative extension or something like that, they can kind of give you pointers, and believe it or not, they know your area. It's funny, when my wife went to ours, she talked to them and they were like, she mentioned the town that we live in, and she's like, yeah, we just bought a farm there. I'm going to do a flower farm. And the guy's like, I know this county. There isn't a farm out there that has been for sale in the last 20 years and whatever. The only one that it could possibly be is this property right here. And she's like, yeah, that's ours. And, it's like that. They know their area is my point.
Right.
It's the reason, I tell you that story, because they know what's going on and what properties are there. And, and the guy right away was like, oh, that's a horse farm and whatever. That's the only place you'd have the land and could do, what you did. And she's like, yeah, that's us. And, oh, okay, that makes sense. And yeah, I want to come out and see it. And, these are people who actually care about, gardening and planting and kind of want to get into stuff. So, connecting with these people can really give you a better understanding. And these are people who, they have the farmers coming and saying, hey, this is destroying my crops, or I'm having a real big problem with this. And they've been through the issues, so they know what the solutions are. You can learn from the people around you. And that's like the same idea as like, being in that Prepping Badass group we have on Facebook or listening to the podcast. The idea is when we talk and work together as a community, you can understand what's going on and kind of learn from other people's failures and mistakes and other people's successes, and that's how we kind of, sort through it all and work together to be a better, be a better situation. I was just watching a TV show and like, it was like, stuff like the Skull and Bones and things like that. Well, the reason that these people are so successful is because they work together and they talk about experiences and they help each other out. And that's what we should be doing, in the farming community, in the survival prepping community, in the gun community. You learn from each other's stuff. It's not about secrets. It's, a rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. We can learn from each other and all benefit. And that's what it, comes down to. That's, I mean,
you don't always have to be a cocky, yeah, you don't always have to be a cocky know-it-all. There's always somebody that you can learn from.
Fun. Save that for the bar.
Yeah,
I mean,
you go.
That's the place for that. But when you want to come over and have cigars and sit around the campfire and drink whiskey, we can just kind of help each other out and be nice. We'll go with that. So that's the thing. I mean, we've met a lot of great people like Darren Taylor and over at Murray Mayhem and Hamish and, a lot of you guys, Kilo 23 there and, all these different people, Chris over at the Beard Show, all these people, we bring something else to, the community and share different things. And that's cool. We really help each other. Kevin, just reached out with over at
Lloyd Bailey. Yeah. The Arm Lutheran.
The Arm Lutheran over there. It's always different, stuff, different perspective, different areas, but we can help each other out. It's like we talked in one of the most recent podcasts there, that episodes, that, working together and helping each other out is what makes you strong. And as a country, if we're not divided and we work together, that's what'll make us strong. Kind of unite in our similarities. You might be like, hey, well, I do compost and I'm all about organic and whatever, but somebody else might know a trick. Yeah, but you know what? I plant garlic around the outside of my garden to keep the deer out, or whatever. Or I put what the heck? There's different plants, the little yellow freaking ones that my wife plants in the garden to keep the bugs and mosquitoes out. No, I was thinking, I don't know what the hell they are, but it doesn't matter. That's my wife's business. But the idea is, we work together to, share ideas and get to the, to the outcome that we want. And I think that's, kind of what we do here and what we're trying to spread and make people, aware of is, hey, if we unite and work together, we're not looking to go to war or do battle with somebody. It's just the same. We prepare to be ready and protect our family, Yeah, sorry. But are we good? I don't want to cause problems over there.
One thing I did want to touch on when we're talking about gardens. Now, this isn't soil related, but and I know a lot of you guys that listen are like are the hippie types, and I'll get angry emails about it. But poison. There's so much great shit you can buy that'll kill all the fucking bugs and all the nasty shit that wants to eat your plants. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of insecticides. Sorry, I just wanted to get that out there because the last couple of years I've just been experimenting with different stuff and it really fucking works. My neighbors all
secret Monsanto supporter.
My neighbors all like organic shit, and she brought over one day this organic mosquito repellent.
Yeah.
It didn't fucking work because it's organic. It's like some sort of catnip mint shit. They don't care about that stuff. You got to poison those motherfuckers. That's all I'm saying.
I'm just speechless. I don't even know what to say. I feel like you have to take every step you can to just offend everybody. Like, I don't think somebody was offended today. Let me step up.
Here's the hippie plants you can plant around your garden, though, to keep bugs out. Basil, lavender, lemongrass, catnip, marigolds, lemon balm, rosemary. I've got all those plants.
That's the ones in the garden. That's what I got. All right.
I've got all those growing all over my yard and shit, but they don't work half as well as just spraying fucking pesticide on everything. And, most of those pesticides basically evaporate off within about 4 hours. You're going to kill everything, and then 4 or 5 hours later, it's fine. It's completely safe to be out there. So don't be scared of the pesticides.
And then you're going to put that in your mouth, Kevin. You're going to feed your babies that kind of shit. So I'm just saying, to each his own. And no, I'm not all hippie organic stuff, but teach his own, right? Let's go with that. I think that's what I got today, though. So, hey, get out there, put your hands in the dirt. Maybe if you are one of those hippies, you can go out there barefoot, be grounded for a little while, change your whole outlook on life. So with that, stay safe, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
The Survival and Basic Badass Podcast is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.
Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to FishingBooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.